Today, the Matt Walsh Show, Trump is already off and running as President of the United States. We'll review the battery of executive orders and actions from just his first day in office, and we'll talk about what I think was the most important part of his inaugural address on Monday. Also, it only took about 3 hours, but we now have the first big media hoax of the second administration. This time they're claiming that Elon did a Nazi salute at Trump's rally, which is nonsense, of course. And speaking of executive orders, Trump's order banishing gender ideology from the federal government is spectacular and may be the final nail in the coffin for this hideous and evil ideology. We'll talk about all that and more today on The Matt Walsh Show. America's golden age is just getting started. Be here with us for every moment. There's never been a better time to join Daily Wire Plus. Use code 47NOW for 47% off your new annual membership. Being a husband, father, and host of my own show means life never slows down. Imagine trying to eat 31 different fruits and vegetables every day. It sounds miserable and time-consuming. But with Balance of Nature fruits and veggies, there's never been a more convenient dietary supplement to ensure you get a wide variety of fruits and vegetables every day with 31 different whole fruits and vegetable ingredients. Balance of Nature takes fruit and vegetables, freeze-dries them, turns them into a powder, and then puts them into a capsule. You take your fruit and veggie capsules every day, and then your body knows exactly what to do with them. Go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Walsh for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Walsh. Manifest destiny is a concept that has not been explicitly invoked by an American president in a very long time. It's the idea that Americans have a divine mandate to conquer, to expand, to reach out across vast expanses. If James Polk hadn't embraced manifest destiny in the middle of the 19th century, there's a very good chance that America wouldn't look anything like what it does today. We wouldn't have states like California and Utah and Oregon, Washington, and many more. I mean, if we didn't have the spirit of manifest destiny, really from the beginning of our nation's history, our country never would have gained access to the Pacific. We would have established no foothold west of the Mississippi at all. Foreign powers would have retained control over wide swaths of the North American continent. We would be a much smaller, much weaker nation today. So small and weak that by now, we may not even exist at all. We wouldn't have experienced the unprecedented economic and technological growth that we did in the 19th and 20th centuries, growth that ensured America would become the world's greatest superpower. As part of our journey to the West, we developed everything from new farming techniques to the telegraph system to the transcontinental railroad and countless other things. This was a period of extraordinary expansion in every sense, made possible by Americans' belief in God and his will and his calling on our lives. And yet, until yesterday, no modern American president wanted to talk about this. Manifest destiny had become somehow a point of embarrassment. The pioneer spirit was extinguished in favor of a spirit of weakness and shame. But one thing we know from the inauguration yesterday is that Donald Trump wants to change that. It was one of the major themes of his inaugural address. What made his address so brilliant is that he talked about all of the practical things that we need to do as a country to get to a point where we can thrive and succeed again. But he also, at the same time, took a larger, kind of grander view. He talked about the sweeping vision of things along with the practical. And as far as sweeping visions, that's what manifest destiny is all about. So Trump was not paralyzed or guilt-ridden by the idea of manifest destiny. He wasn't focused on the plight of so-called indigenous people, quote unquote. He didn't make any apologies for this country or the people living here or our history, our ancestors. Instead, he affirmed that God wants this country to succeed and grow and flourish. He also affirmed that America was a great country when it had the will and desire to explore and expand and conquer, and that we need to return to those principles. And then Trump explained what exactly that will look like in a modern context. Watch.
The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. and we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
Now, in the past century, American presidents just simply have not talked like this. Barack Obama, for example, claimed that we had duties to the world, including what he called the Muslim world. Joe Biden fear-mongered about democracy and COVID, which he claimed falsely had taken more lives than World War II. In fact, even if you go back and watch Trump's first inaugural address back in 2017, you're not going to find rhetoric about America's divine mandate to grow, expand, and flourish. Instead, the theme of Trump's first address was more about, the immediate concerns, specifically restoring American manufacturing, ending wasteful commitments to foreign governments, securing the border. This is what, is of course the America First platform. And the plan at the time was to shore up America's failing infrastructure and restore the government to the people. And it was a necessity to do this. It was a necessary plan that was intended to stop what Trump called the ongoing American carnage. But it also was also a plan that signaled that after 8 years of rule by Barack Obama, America needed basically emergency repairs. We were not in a position to conquer and explore. And there are still many repairs that need to be made, but now we can go beyond that as well. In 2025, for his second administration, Trump has made it clear that this time around, the goal is bigger. Now his administration intends to expand American influence and usher in what he's calling a new golden age, an era of historic economic and technological progress. As Trump went on to explain, there's never been a better time in modern history for a president to call for something like this. Trump now has the full backing of some of the smartest people in the country, including actual innovators like Elon Musk. And perhaps more to the point, Trump himself just achieved what many considered impossible. He became president for a second time, despite the efforts of every power center in the country and on the planet to stop him. At one point in his speech, Trump made it clear that he believes he's only alive today because of divine intervention. And inspired by this near-death experience, he's now committed to reviving manifest destiny, a desire to explore and conquer that has defined Americans since our country was founded. Watch.
Ambition is the lifeblood of a great nation. And right now, our nation is more ambitious than any other. There's no nation like our nation. Americans are explorers, builders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and pioneers. The spirit of the frontier is written into our hearts. The call of the next great adventure resounds from within our souls. Our American ancestors turned a small group of colonies on the edge of a vast continent into a mighty republic of the most extraordinary citizens on earth. No one comes close. Americans pushed thousands of miles through a rugged land of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, braved untold dangers, won the Wild West, ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions from poverty, harnessed electricity, split the atom, launched mankind into the heavens, and put the universe of human knowledge into the palm of the human hand. If we work together, there is nothing we cannot do and no dream we cannot achieve. Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken.
Now, within hours of this speech, Trump took nearly 200 executive actions to put all these principles into action and to restore America's sovereignty. And in between each one, he talked to reporters at length, which is something that Joe Biden obviously would be incapable of doing. Trump opened up oil and gas exploration in Alaska, which the Biden administration had shut down. In fact, he permitted drilling across much of the coastal United States. This is a whole frontier that was closed to the American economy solely for superstitious ideological reasons, and now it's open. More symbolically, but also very important, Trump also reinstated the name Mount McKinley, and also changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Now, Mount McKinley in Alaska had been named Mount McKinley for over a century until, you may remember or may not, the Obama administration back in 2015, I believe, changed it to Denali, which is supposedly the, quote, indigenous name for it. And Trump is changing it back. And obviously this has upset, as you would expect, a lot of liberals and even Republicans are calling him out. Some are calling him out for it. But we can change the name of the mountain back because it's our mountain. It belongs to us. It is an American mountain in America. So we have the right to name it. The so-called indigenous people don't have the right to name it. I mean, they can call it whatever they want in their private lives, but they don't have the right to put the name on the mountain. We earned that right. They did not. I mean, the indigenous people, they never even developed a written language. So whatever they called the mountain 1,000 years ago is unknown to us and them. They don't even know what they called it. We are far more advanced. We conquered this country. It's our mountain. We name it. And that is Trump's attitude, and it is the right one. Trump also pardoned roughly 1,500 January 6th defendants who were persecuted and persecuted for political reasons, which is a major step towards restoring Americans' First Amendment rights. He signed an order to make federal architecture more aesthetically appealing, which also matters because this is what inspires future generations. That's what great architecture is made to do. It matters. It matters what kind of buildings we live in and what those buildings look like because we live in them and we have to look at them. And that really does matter because we're human beings and beauty matters. Additionally, Trump withdrew the United States from the World Health Organization, which worked with China to cover up the origins of COVID, a decision that, of course, led to years of suffering and lockdowns in this country. Crucially, Trump also ended birthright citizenship for illegal aliens, which is maybe the single most important step he could take when it comes to fulfilling this country's manifest destiny. After all, we can't explore and conquer anything if we are being conquered ourselves. Watch.
This next order relates to the definition of birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment of the United States.
That's a good one. Birthright. That's a big one.
What about that one in the courts? That one is likely to be challenged.
Could be. We think we have good grounds, but you could be right. I mean, you'll find out. It's ridiculous. We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But, we'll see. We think we have very good grounds.
Sir,
people have wanted to do this for decades.
Now, this is a move that, like many other moves that Trump makes, obviously is going to be challenged in the courts. As Trump went on to acknowledge, Democrats believe, whether correctly or not, that the key to their political power is importing illegal aliens. Because most of those illegal aliens will eventually have children, and then those children become American citizens and can vote in future elections, and they're just assuming that those children will vote for them, although it turns out that even that assumption looks like is not exactly correct. So, but on that assumption, Democrats are going to fight very hard to make sure that this executive order is overturned. It's not clear at the moment if they'll win. There's no Supreme Court case that's ever directly addressed this particular issue, but it's clear that birthright citizenship for the children of illegal aliens is one of the most destructive policies that's ever been implemented in this country. It gives a massive incentive for foreign nationals to flood across the border and fundamentally reshape this country. But Trump isn't just relying on this one executive order. He's also already fired the people who are responsible for the fraudulent asylum process in this country, which is a major loophole that illegal aliens have been exploiting forever. Asylum, as you may know, is intended for people who are facing extreme and very specific cases of political persecution. But in recent years, the government has been allowing anyone with a fake asylum claim to stay in the country. Asylum went from something meant for people facing political persecution to something for people who just happen to want to come into the country. Now, just to give you some perspective on the numbers, according to DHS, quote, affirmative asylum case filings nearly doubled from 241,280 applications in 2022 to over 456,000 in 2023, the highest number on record. So this is a massive increase in a short amount of time. And almost every single one of those claims is fraudulent. But these people are being allowed into the country while their fake claim is adjudicated, a process that could take years. And then when it's found out to be, fake, it doesn't matter because they're gone. They're off into the interior of the country. They don't show up for the hearings. So they're essentially given a free pass into the country. And that's all about to change. The New York Times reported with shock and horror on the changes that have already been made to the asylum system on day one of the second Trump administration. Quote, the acting head of the U.S. immigration court system and 3 other top officials were fired on Monday, soon after President Trump took office. The abrupt removal signaled the Trump administration wants to remake the immigration court system, which is housed under the Justice Department, as part of a broader immigration crackdown that Mr. Trump began within minutes of being sworn in for a second term. Immigration judges oversee an essential part of the system, granting asylums to migrants whose claims pass muster and ordering the deportation of those whose cases do not. These are people who obviously should have been fired a long time ago, and now that's finally happening. And again, Trump's not stopping there. He also declared that foreign drug cartels are terrorist organizations, and he didn't foreclose the possibility of going into Mexico and taking them out. Watch.
This is actually an executive order designating the cartels and other organizations to be foreign terrorist organizations.
That's a big one.
Yes, sir.
People have wanted to do this for years. So they are now designated as terrorist organizations, foreign. And Mexico probably doesn't want that. But we have to do what's right. They're killing our people. They're killing 250, 300,000 American people a year. Not 100, like has been reported for 15 years. It's probably 300,000.
President Trump, if cartels are now going to be seen as foreign terror organizations, would you think about ordering U.S. Special Forces into Mexico to take them out?
Could happen. Stranger things have happened.
So we could very easily and honestly say that Trump was more productive in his first 12 hours in office than Biden was in 4 years, by far. By far, no way. And really, all of this stuff is what manifest destiny looks like in practice. If people are going to cause problems for us, they're going to hurt us, hurt America, hurt Americans, we can go out and take care of them. If there's territory that's valuable to us, like the Panama Canal, that we built, well, it's ours. We could take it. If there's a planet that could ensure the survival of the human race one day, potentially, like Mars, then we'll colonize it. And that, by the way, was maybe my personal favorite part of his speech when he declared that America will plant a flag on Mars. And that really matters. Not just to ensure humanity's survival, because I have no idea whether Mars will ever be actually colonized. Elon Musk seems to think so, and he knows a lot more about this stuff than you or I do. But regardless of that, planting our flag on another planet would be the greatest achievement in the entire history of mankind. And we should strive for that achievement simply for its own sake, because great countries do great things, and because we as a people, as a nation, need a moment of collective triumph like that. We haven't had one in many, many years. In other words, it's clear from his first day in office that Trump is focused both on the practical issues and on the big picture. It's difficult for a leader to do both of those things at once. Joe Biden, of course, did neither. Wasn't even clear who was running the country for the last 4 years. But that's all changed now. And if Trump could keep up this level of focus and momentum through all 4 years, which isn't going to be easy, but if he can, then this has the chance to be one of the great presidential terms in American history. Trump has embraced an ideology that's rooted in confidence, one that all successful and high-functioning countries embrace. He's openly promoting the promise of manifest destiny, which no president has done since James Polk. And now, armed with the lessons he learned from his previous 4 years in office, the chances seem pretty high that Trump will make good on that promise. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Our country was born fighting for freedom, breaking away from a nation that forced us to buy their overpriced tea and tried to blockade our ports when we tossed it into the Boston Harbor. We all know how that turned out. So now it's time for another revolution, throwing those overpriced big wireless contracts overboard just like that tea. You don't need to pay $100 a month just to get a free phone. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, says no to inflated prices with a qualifying plan of just $45 a month. you can get a free Samsung Galaxy. And yes, this is for premium service, unlimited talk, text, 25 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot at a fraction of the price of the big guys. All in America's most dependable 5G network. That's right, same towers, same coverage as the big guys, just a lot more affordable. Get your free Samsung Galaxy by visiting puretalk.com/Walsh today. Switching is easy. Again, that's puretalk.com/Walsh to claim your free Samsung Galaxy with qualifying purchases from Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Okay, well, we made it about 3 hours into Trump's first day in office before the first big media hoax came along. And so you've seen the headlines probably all over the place, declaring, screeching from the heavens that Elon Musk did a Nazi salute at Trump's rally yesterday. Politico, Rolling Stone, The Guardian, all the mainstream outlets have been reporting this. AOC, lots of other Democrats, all claiming that Elon got up on stage at Trump's rally and did a Nazi salute intentionally. So let's go to the video. We'll just play the full video in context of Elon Musk on stage, and we'll see this gesture that's being called a Nazi salute. Here it is. Look.
Yes! This is what victory feels like. Yeah! And this was no ordinary victory. This was a fork in the road of human civilization. Okay. This there are elections that come and go. Some elections are, important, some are not. But this one this one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you. My heart goes out to you. It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured. Thanks to you.
Okay, so the so-called Nazi salute was actually Elon saying, "My heart goes out to you." And you can hear him say that. So that what they're doing is that they're showing the gesture and then they're cutting it off before he says, "My heart goes out to you." So he's pouring out his heart to the crowd. And it's very clear in context that's what he means. And this is also anyone who's seen Elon Musk up on stage during the last few months of the campaign, and now this is just his style. He's got kind of this wild, freewheeling style and lots of gesturing and that sort of thing. And so it's obvious that that's what happened there. Although, I mean, even to address this sort of thing feels rather silly because we all know that obviously Elon Musk was not doing a Nazi salute. If you are not a mentally defective person, then even before you see the video, as soon as you see the headline saying Elon Musk did a Nazi salute, you already know that that's false. Because that's not a thing that any functioning human being would do. Why would Elon Musk get up on stage and do a Nazi salute? What would be the reason for that? What would be the motive for that? So the moment you see the headline, you already know that it's a lie, obviously. And then you see the video and it's clear what was meant by it. Now, is the gesture kind of like awkward? Yeah, but so what? It's okay to have a sense of humor about it. If we just be people with a sense of humor, then you could look at it like Elon making that gesture as a way to signal my heart goes out to you is legitimately funny. It's just funny and you laugh about it and you move on and that's it. It doesn't have to be, it's not a headline. It's not anything. You just move on with your life because every single person knows that obviously Elon Musk was not doing a Nazi salute. There's no reason for that. There'd be no motive for it. No, you don't stand to benefit at all from it. This is something that the media and the left, they pretend not to understand. They pretend not to understand that people don't just do things randomly, spontaneously. There's motives behind any action that a person takes. There's a reason for it. And if you're a very, very high functioning and successful person like Elon Musk, one of the most successful people on the planet, if not the most successful person on the planet, period, you don't get to that point by just doing things spontaneously and randomly, even if they're self-destructive and dumb. No, there's a reason for why you do things. And there would be no reason, there would be no motive, there'd be nothing to be gained, clearly, from getting on stage and doing a Nazi salute. So the whole thing is now the positive that comes from this, I think, from the media's first attempt at a hoax, and we know there's going to be 50 more before the year's over. But I think the encouraging thing is just that I don't think it just doesn't get any traction beyond left-wing circles. No one takes these people seriously anymore. No one believes them. So the narrative has no chance of breaking out beyond the circle of people who already think that Elon Musk is a Nazi regardless. Anyone who didn't think that previous to this moment is not going to be convinced because these people have no credibility and no one pays attention to them. All right. So right before he left office, Biden, and I'm loath to talk about Joe Biden again, but we do have to mention this, that right before he left office, Biden issued last-minute pardons to a whole slew of people, including Fauci, Mark Milley, a bunch of political allies. Liz Cheney was on the list, and his entire family. We know Hunter Biden got the preemptive pardon, and now Biden's whole immediate family also got one. Trump addressed this last night. Listen.
I was surprised that President Biden would go and pardon his whole family, because that makes him look very guilty. You know, I could have pardoned my family. I could have pardoned myself, my family. I said, if I do that, it's going to make me look very guilty. I don't think I'd be sitting here, frankly. If I did that, I don't think I'd be sitting here right now, because I would have shown that you're guilty.
Now, the thing to understand about these pardons is that, you know, they are truly unprecedented. I mean, obviously, we know that it's an American tradition now, unfortunately, for presidents to issue a bunch of questionable pardons on the way out the door. Trump did that. Let's be honest. I mean, he passed out some pardons that many of which I did not agree with when he was, you know, in his last couple of days in office. And so that happens. Every president does it. And then we all complain about it and we move on. And that's basically been the tradition. But what Biden has done, his pardons are significantly worse than merely questionable, because he doled out preemptive pardons to dozens of people, which has never been done before. There's never been this mass of preemptive pardons given to people. It's never been done. Preemptive pardons that cover any and all hypothetical crimes that those people may have committed. Again, nothing like this has been done. We have seen on rare occasions blanket pardons, but blanket pardons are for specific crimes that have been committed. These are for any crimes, any theoretical crime, even those that have not been investigated or charged, much less, you know, convicted. So the Biden regime has set this as precedent now. They've set as precedent that the president, before he leaves, can just wave his magical sorcerer wand and declare that all of his friends and relatives are off the hook for any crimes that they may have potentially committed. Doesn't matter what. And now every president's going to do this. And we know that because, you know, Trump, before he leaves office, now he's going to do it. And you can't even blame him because, first of all, well, Biden did it, so why shouldn't I? And second, in his case, there's actually a reason for it, potential, because he has the experience of having been in office before, and then he watched as the next administration spent the following 4 years trying to throw all of his allies, including and Trump himself, in prison. So Trump would actually have a reason to do it, and so Trump would probably do something similar. And then the next president's going to say, well, the last two presidents have done this. So now this is officially precedent. This is what everyone does. I'd be a sucker if I didn't. I mean, we're going to get to a point where it'd be controversial to not do it, because then all of your friends and allies are like, what, you know, you don't care about us? You're just going to hang us out to dry? So that is the precedent that's been set. And remember, Biden was supposed to be the great norms respecter, the great defender of political norms, the great preserver of our institutions and our traditions. He was obviously always the opposite of that. Democrats always are. Democrats, anytime they put themselves in the position of defending institutions and traditions, that something's amiss, because these people don't care about traditions and institutions. Least of all do they give a damn about norms. They care about those things only in the sense that they want to rip them to shreds. And here's the thing about this that really gets me is that, and this is what makes it all the more grotesque, is that it was not even practically necessary. Okay? And everyone knows that. Everybody knows, even Biden knows, to the extent that he can know anything at this point, knows that Trump was not going to go on a revenge tour and start throwing the Biden family in prison. That was not going to happen. He wasn't going to go after Fauci or Mark Milley or Liz Cheney. I would have liked to see him do some of that. Fauci in particular deserves to be investigated and then thrown in prison. He's one of the most corrupt and evil bureaucrats in American history. But so he would deserve it. But it wasn't going to happen. Trump wasn't going to do that. He never promised that he would do it. We just know, based on our previous experience with the Trump administration, it's just not what he's going to do. It's not his style. It's not his focus. He certainly wasn't going to prosecute anyone in Biden's family, even Hunter. He wasn't going to go after Hunter. He probably would have pardoned Hunter himself, if anything. Which means he definitely wasn't going to go after other random Biden relatives. That was not going to happen. So why did Biden do this? What was the point? I mean, this is arguably harmful even to the people that he's giving the pardons to. If I had committed no federal crimes and was not suspected of committing any and was not under investigation for any federal crimes, I would not want the president to come along and issue me a preemptive pardon for any federal crimes I may have committed. Now, I would say to that, yeah, but I didn't commit any, so no, it's okay. In case you committed any federal crimes, wink, wink, sure you didn't. But just in case you did. No, but I really haven't. I haven't committed any federal crime. No thanks. I don't need the pardon. So all you're doing is make it, you do that for somebody, just making them look guilty. You're casting an air of suspicion over them. And so now that's forever a person who was pardoned for federal crimes, even though they never committed any, they would say, or was ever suspected of committing any. So even from the perspective of the person who gets the totally pointless, the effectively pointless preemptive federal pardon, you could argue that even for them, it's especially if they are not in fact guilty of doing anything, it's not even a benefit. So what was the point? Why did he do it? Well, he did it for one reason, I think. He did it for one single reason, which is that he did it in order to make it look like he had to protect these people from political persecution by Trump. He did it as one last little jab, one last attempt to make Trump look like a fascist dictator who would seek revenge on his enemies. So that's all it was. This was purely about building the narrative that Trump is a Nazi, that Trump is Hitler, that he's a dictator. And that is a narrative that already lost, a narrative that the American people already rejected in huge numbers. But that's what it was. And that's what makes it even worse than it already would be. The fact that Biden was willing to set this truly, truly heinous precedent that will be abused in so many unjust ways for decades to come. And he did it all for no reason other than trying to just land a little political jab. For the sake of that, for the pettiest of reasons, he was willing to burn every political norm to the ground. I mean, that's how petty and vindictive this guy is, and all these people who are now out of power. It really is just evil. Speaking of evil, I also wanted to mention this. Yesterday, Cecile Richards, and you might not have heard about this because it was there's a lot going on yesterday, but even if there wasn't a lot going on, you still may not have heard about this because this is not someone who's been in the public eye for a while. But still, Cecile Richards, who is the former president, or was, I should say, the former president of Planned Parenthood, died of brain cancer yesterday. And I think she was 67 years old. And she was president of Planned Parenthood for 12 years. And so, of course, the tributes, the admiring obituaries came rolling in. Biden and Obama and many other high-profile Democrats put out statements mourning the loss of Cecile Richards. Here's the CNN write-up. I'll read a little bit of it. It says, Cecile Richards, a women's rights crusader who served as president of Planned Parenthood as the nation approached a critical inflection point over reproductive freedom, has died, her family said Monday in a statement. She was 67. This morning, our beloved Cecile passed away at home, surrounded by her family and her ever-loyal dog, Ollie. Our hearts are broken today, but no words could do justice to the joy she brought to our lives. Richards died just hours before President Donald Trump was sworn into a second term as president. Richards' family was grateful to the doctors and healthcare workers who provided her excellent care, and the friends, family, and well-wishers who have been by her side, so on and so forth. She served as president of Planned Parenthood from 2006 to 2018, helping boost the profile of an organization long criticized by conservatives and anti-abortion activists who've called on the government to strip its funding. Yes, we have. And then we have the statements from various abortion groups that are very upset about this. I just think it should be said that Cecile Richards was probably the most influential leader of Planned Parenthood since Margaret Sanger. And that is to say that Richards was one of the most prolific mass murderers in history. She helped to kill millions of human beings. She was truly an evil, monstrous person. And mourning her death is like mourning the death of Osama bin Laden. I mean, imagine Osama bin Laden, at Osama bin Laden's untimely demise, if there were tearful obituaries in the media about it, which even then there probably were. But it's actually worse than that because bin Laden killed far fewer people. Far fewer. So Cecile Richards was much worse in pretty much every way than Osama bin Laden. The only thing that's tragic about this woman's death is that it did not happen inside a prison, or that it didn't happen much sooner before she was able to kill, some 4 million babies. And I know it sounds really harsh and terrible to say that about someone who just died of brain cancer. And in almost every case, I would never say that. But again, she killed millions of people. So this is, by any measure, a mass killer whose slaughter and destruction puts her in the same category as like Pol Pot, Genghis Khan. But again, in many ways worse. Many ways worse. And besides all that, why should we be sad? She was just a clump of cells. Just a clump of cells. Why did her life have any meaning at all? Who cares about her life? What meaning does it possibly have? If all those millions of babies that she killed, if their lives had no meaning, no moral value, no meaning, then why does her life have any meaning? It doesn't. It's just, the babies, right, that we treat them, her organization treated the babies like medical waste, like garbage that you literally throw into a dumpster. And so by that logic, she is also just garbage that belongs in a dumpster. By her own logic, by the logic that she lived by. So I guess no matter how you look at it, either you see Cecile Richards as a mass murderer, in which case her death is not a tragedy, or you like her because you agree with abortion, but in that case, her life had no fundamental intrinsic value at all. So either way, you're back at the starting point, which is that there is absolutely no reason to be mourning this evil, despicable person's death whatsoever. And that is my obituary for her. Let's get to the comment section.
If you're a man, it's required that you grow a beard. Hey, we're the sweet baby gang.
Matt, I'm a Lions fan. No one understands the trauma of rooting for a team that loses in the playoffs. I hear you and I see you. It's a suffering. It's an unseen suffering that nobody can understand. unless they've experienced it. And no one has any sympathy either. That's the other tough thing about it. When you try to talk to someone about your pain, they're very patronizing, I found. And that makes it all the worse. Matt talking about how he's an introvert and snuck in watching the football game at a ball is so real. This is why I like him. Well, I can only be real with you. You know that. I will say that the balls have come to an end. So we did a bunch of them over the weekend, and the other thing too is that, and this is it. I told you we were going to all these balls, and I'd never been to one before. My last experience with anything that would be sort of like that, would be like prom in high school, and so I was very wrong about what a ball entails, because in my head I had imagined that a ball was an event where dancing was kind of the main activity. It was what you did there. I thought it would be 95% of what you did. I thought that's what a ball was. And it turns out, and I'm relieved by this, that balls are not even 1% dancing. Nobody dances. There's like no dancing that happens at all. What happens is that the band plays music really loud while everyone stands around drinking and shouting over it. And that's it. That's the whole thing. There's just no one dances at any point. And I guess in my head, somewhat subconsciously, I had an image of a ball that was stuck in the 19th century, because I thought that, all the women would be in big poofy dresses and the men would be wearing top hats and monocles and carrying canes, and there'd be classical music gently playing and people dancing very elegantly, and then the men would approach the women and say, "Excuse me, my lady, may I have this dance? Would you bequeath me the honor of this dance?" And they would dance, and then they'd get back in their carriages and ride across a snowy pasture to their estates and die of typhoid fever, because I thought, it's a very 19th century vision that I had. So turns out none of that happened. Well, we may have gotten typhoid fever. I don't know, but that remains to be seen. But the rest of it was very different from that. It's really just a marketing event. It's rather a networking event is what it is. And I guess I should have known better that everything in DC is just a networking event. Anything at all that you do that's supposed to be for fun is always just a networking event. And so it's that, except with loud music that you have to shout over. So a lot of fun. Matt looked freezing today. Yeah, I was. We did our live coverage of the inauguration. We were outside, as you saw, if you watched the Daily Wire's live coverage of the inauguration yesterday. And it's kind of funny because we got that spot outside back when we thought the inauguration would be outside. And so the spot was set up so that you could see the big crowd in the background, right, at the inauguration. But then everybody moved inside, and there was a couple days of chaos behind the scenes because we were all saying, well, we got to move inside too. Why are we going to be randomly outside for 3 hours when everyone else is inside? And there's behind us a lot, just an empty lot now. And so I think we tried to move inside, but we couldn't get a permit to broadcast anywhere else. So we had to just stay outside. So we were stuck out there, freezing our asses off for no real reason. And, I'll say in the end, I like to think it was worth it. It was certainly, it was worth it to be here and cover the event and all that. The being outside part, I'm not totally sold on whether that was worth it. Hopefully the background and the atmosphere improved the viewing experience to some extent. At least tell me that it did, so that I know I got frostbite for a reason. And it was also funny too, because we were planning on covering the inaugural, the speech, the inaugural address. And we were outside the whole time. And if you watch the coverage, you know that Trump was speaking, and all of us, we were watching it, but we were on screen too in a little box. So we were on camera the whole time. And there was part of me that was hoping that it'd be a speech on the shorter side, just because I had to be outside the whole time listening to it, and it was like 12 degrees. And then Trump gives a speech. It's 29 minutes. It's the shortest speech he's ever given. And I also legitimately think it's probably my favorite Trump speech of all time. Not just because it was short, but the shortness helps because it's just punchy and to the point. And he just ran through all these things he's going to do. We talked about it. The grand vision of America. I thought it was fantastic. So it was just a win-win. It was like a great speech. It was short. We don't have to be outside for 3-4 hours, and fantastic. But then he immediately goes and gives another speech that we threw to while we were still outside, and that speech went for 4.5 hours. So we still were outside freezing the whole time. Anyway, it was a good experience all around, I will say. You watched our exclusive inauguration coverage from the weekend through the historic day in D.C. right here on Daily Wire Plus. We were all over Washington. Exclusive coverage, uncensored, unfiltered, and ad-free, exactly as we intended it. The Daily Wire doesn't just report the news. We go straight to the center of it to give you the facts. Live daily shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media, groundbreaking, culture-shaping, premium content, hit movies, explosive documentaries, and series that actually matter. Not a Daily Wire Plus member yet? Well, now is your moment. Get 47% off as we honor the 47th President of the United States. Use code 47 to checkout. That's 47% off when you go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Don't forget code 47 for 47% off at dailywire.com/subscribe. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. I began the show talking about some of Donald Trump's day one executive orders on everything from architecture to drug cartels. But there's one executive order that I didn't talk about because it deserves its own extended monologue. So saving it for here. And that's Trump's executive order that officially ends gender ideology in the government and establishes a very clear definition of male and female, namely the definition that's been recognized throughout all of human history until 15 seconds ago. In a second, I'm going to read extensively from this order because this is a monumental moment in American history. It's also a very well-crafted document that sets out in plain English the truth about gender ideology, which is a fight that, of course, I've been personally waging for many years through my film, What is a Woman?, investigations into barbarism in places like Vanderbilt, testimony at the Tennessee legislature to enact a ban on child mutilation that's now before the U.S. Supreme Court, and so on. There have been so many others who are pivotal in this fight, from Chaya Wright-Schick of Libs of TikTok to Riley Gaines, Billboard Chris, Colin Wright, Chloe Cole, many others. Trans activists have done everything in their power to prevent a moment like this from happening. And in my case, as you know, part of my story, they forced my family from our home, attempted to destroy my life and my family over the course of years. They've threatened us along with anyone else who attempted to speak the truth about such a fundamental issue. And they knew all along that their position was incoherent and wrong, so they had to resort to these kinds of tactics to have any hope of winning. But they haven't won. They have lost in spectacular fashion. They have lost everything. They are losers. And I want every trans activist who hears this to know that you lost. You are losers. We won. We beat you. And I hope it makes you sad to hear that. I hope it causes you great grief and misery, because that will only be a fraction of the misery that you brought into this world and inflicted on innocent people, especially children, many of whom are going to have to live with the damage you did to them for the rest of their lives. So you deserve all of this humiliation. And I'm glad that you're experiencing it. I'm glad that I could be a part, just a part in making you feel so miserable. I'm really happy about that. Everything that these thugs have been working to build, all the lies and propaganda and nonsense they've piled up, has come crashing down like one big grotesque Jenga tower. This executive order is not achieving that victory on its own. Of course, this is a fight, as I said, that's been waged for many years by many people. But this is, I think, in a lot of ways, the final nail in the coffin. The executive order that Donald Trump just signed is entitled Defending Women from Gender Ideology, Extremism, and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. Yesterday, Trump alluded to the order during his inaugural address, and then later in the day, he signed it. Watch.
There are only two genders, male and female.
Protecting women from radical gender ideologies.
Mr. President, going back to the World Health Organization.
Now, on one level, it's surreal that a president even has to issue an order like this or make a proclamation that there are only two genders. 20 years ago, it would be like a president declaring the sky is blue or water is wet. It's like an executive order clarifying that 2 + 2 = 4. But trans activists in the Democrat Party have insisted on denying one of the most basic fundamental truths of biology. And until recently, a lot of people, including a lot of conservatives, were too afraid to respond to this madness with the truth. But those days appear to be very much over. The executive order that Donald Trump just signed is one of the most well-written, well-reasoned takedowns of gender ideology that I've ever seen. And more importantly, it has the force of law. It ends this madness in the government permanently. It is a death knell to federal funding for this insanity, and it will help facilitate gender ideology's trip to the dustbin of history. Here's how the order begins. Quote, across the country, ideologues who deny the biological reality of sex have increasingly used legal and other socially coercive means to permit men to self-identify as women and gain access to intimate single-sex spaces and activities designed for women, from women's domestic abuse shelters to women's workplace showers. This is wrong. Efforts to eradicate biological reality of sex fundamentally attack women by depriving them of their dignity, safety, and well-being. The erasure of sex in language policy has a corrosive impact not just on women, but on the validity of the entire American system. Basing federal policy on truth is critical to scientific inquiry, public safety, morale, and trust in government itself. Close quote. So that's the preamble, and it's very good. And it establishes the stakes very clearly and plainly. A society that doesn't respect truth is incapable of functioning. There's that famous quote that those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And it's true, because once you tell people that the truth is meaningless, then any kind of rational discourse is impossible. Lived experience replaces actual truth, in reality. And anything can be considered truth. Anything can therefore be justified. But sanity seems to be prevailing now. The order very directly states that men cannot self-identify as women under any circumstance. It doesn't matter how much they whine on TikTok or try to get you fired from your job. The truth is the truth, and it doesn't change. Then the order gets into specifics. Quote, it's the policy of the United States to recognize two sexes, male and female. These sexes are not changeable and are grounded in fundamental and incontrovertible reality. This order specifically dismisses the entire concept of gender identity. Quote, gender identity reflects a fully internal and subjective sense of self, disconnected from biological reality and sex, and existing on an infinite continuum that does not provide a meaningful basis for identification and cannot be recognized as a replacement for sex. Close quote. Now, again, this is the kind of argument that people like myself and others have been making for years now. And 10 years ago, it was not something it was something that hardly any elected Republican was willing to say out loud. It certainly would not have been written into an executive order, but times have changed. Then the order does what trans activists are incapable of doing, which is defying the terms. Quote, sex shall refer to an individual's immutable biological classification as either male or female. Sex is not a synonym for and does not include the concept of gender identity. Women or woman and girls or girl shall mean adult and juvenile human females, respectively. Men or man and boys or boy shall mean adult and juvenile human males, respectively. Female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. Male means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the small reproductive cell. Close quote. Okay. So there's your terms defined very clearly. Now, if you watched What is Woman, you know how hard it is to get alleged experts in the field of gender ideology to provide any kind of definition for man or woman. Instead, they'll give you circular explanations that don't make any sense at all. They'll say a woman is someone who says she's a woman, and as the executive order points out, that is completely incoherent. Again, it makes the point as well as you can make it, to the point that, and this has been very rare with like documents written by elected Republicans, but I reading the executive order, I couldn't have written it any better myself. I wouldn't add anything to it. This is exactly what I would say, which is pretty remarkable. Quote, going back to the executive order, gender ideology includes the idea that there is a vast spectrum of genders that are disconnected from one's sex. Gender ideology is eternally inconsistent in that it diminishes sex as an identifiable or useful category, but nevertheless maintains that it's possible for a person to be born in the wrong sexed body. Close quote. Now, the order goes on to ban men from women's prisons. It blocks federal funds from being used to promote gender ideology in any way, including by funding sex changes for prisoners. Federal contractors are affected by the order as well. The order also ensures that a person's biological sex is on their government ID, including their passports. It empowers the Attorney General and other law enforcement officials to go to court to enforce these measures. And all of this would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Now, already the corporate press is predictably freaking out about this. CNN, for example, reported last night, quote, Trump two-gender edict could upend X identity on passports. Yes, you heard that correctly. People can state that their gender is X on passports. It's one of the innovations of the Biden administration. And now a bunch of leftists and federal agencies are upset that X isn't going to be valid anymore. I guess X genders will have to go get new passports. And CNN is playing this up as a big civil rights issue. Now, not to be outdone, gender activists at the so-called People's Rally this weekend were up in arms as well. The journalist Savannah Hernandez spoke to one of these activists. And this is footage that belongs like in a museum as a kind of monument to this insane and defeated ideology. Watch.
I can't pee in 4% of America right now. So
you can't pee in 4% of America.
In 4% of America, it is illegal for me to use the men's restroom in government buildings.
So because of the biology bill that they just passed?
Yes, because I am biologically female, I cannot use the men's restroom in Florida or Utah.
What would you say to people who would say, well, just use the family restroom or a gender-neutral restroom if it's available? Like, what would your thoughts on that be?
What am I supposed to do if there isn't a gender-neutral restroom available? Am I supposed to just hold it? Or am I supposed to just wet my pants? Literally, there's no point to it other than to keep trans people out of the spaces they belong in, because, you know, they use the excuse of like, oh, how are you going to know if it's someone claiming to be a woman just to get into the women's restroom? And it's like, those people are going to be doing things in the restroom that are going to set off red flags. You don't need an additional law on top of that to keep trans women out.
Now, you really can't watch that and come to any other conclusion other than the trans activists are absolutely cooked, as the kids would say. They have no response to the overwhelming rash of defeats that they've suffered, except to claim that, whatever this means, they now won't be able to pee in 4% of America, which, you know, not to get into the nitty-gritty, but I'd argue that the average human being through the course of their life, even if they have an overactive bladder, will probably pee in far less than 0.00001% of America. So this woman has 96% of America left to pee on, you know, by her own math, which I don't know where she's getting it from, but hardly a crisis. And more to the point, until yesterday, it was the official position of the U.S. government to take idiocy like this seriously. We were all supposed to respect their so-called gender identity, whatever gender they say they are, wherever they say they have to urinate. We were supposed to just submit to it, surrender our common sense, all because someone like that will say, well, it makes me sad if I can't pee in the restroom that I want to. It is an eternal embarrassment for the country that we ever allowed any of this to happen to begin with. But there's no time like the present to turn back from it. And what's happened now is that these people have been relegated back to the fringes of irrelevance, where they belong. They are no longer driving U.S. policy. They are no longer going to get people fired from their jobs. They are no longer going to be able to demean and humiliate women in this country, all in the pursuit of their confused and narcissistic desires. Trans activists have lost. That doesn't mean that they're going to go away. It doesn't mean that we can rest on our laurels. It doesn't mean the culture war's over. It doesn't even mean that gender ideology itself is necessarily over for good, but it does mean that they are very much on the losing side and they have very little power anymore. Even the big tech companies are claiming that they're going to stop enforcing speech codes meant to cater to these people. Truth and sanity, two prerequisites to a functioning, thriving society, have prevailed on this issue. And now it's time for our country to function and to thrive and to never let people like this hold any power over our lives whatsoever for any purpose ever again. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow. Godspeed.
John Bickley here, Daily Wire editor-in-chief. Wake up every morning with our show, Morning Wire, where we bring you all the news that you need to know in 15 minutes or less. Join me and my co-host Georgia Howe for daily coverage of all the biggest stories on Morning Wire.